Good morning. We are here at the offices of Finance Malta in Valletta. My name is Simon Osborne. I'm the editor of International Fund Investment. And I'm here with Dermot Butler, who is the chairman of the Custom House Group. Dermot, good morning.
Good morning.
Can I ask you first, when did you get involved and why did you get involved with Malta?
I think it was about 10 years ago. I was asked to come out here by a prospective client who had set up a fund management operation here and was looking to set up a fund and asked us to consider being the administrator. And I came out here, met with him, met the regulators, met lawyers, agreed to go ahead, and was very impressed. Early 2008, late 2007, we agreed in principle to merge the fund services side of a company called Equity Trust, which is arguably the largest independent trust company in the world with 31 offices around the world. And they had grown by acquisition. They'd acquired 3 large trust companies, Insinger, Standard & Chartered, and Amro's trust business. And in those transactions, they acquired some legacy fund administration, and they had to make a decision as to whether they were going to drop it because it wasn't their business, or whether they would make that the sort of 5th arrow in their quiver. And they decided to go the 5th arrow in the quiver. They couldn't acquire anybody because they weren't known for being in the administration business, and nobody likes to be acquired by somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. So they decided to go it alone and do it independently. That proved to be very expensive and not as quick as they were hoping. We met them and we agreed to a merger whereby they would put all their fund services business into Custom House. We would remain autonomous. And that happened when they were the equivalent of 30% of the total book. We were 70%, and they bought enough shares to give them a tiny majority, which means that we're now part of the Equity Trust Group. But we are autonomous in the way that we run the company. When that happened, we had to reorganize and take in some of their offices, for instance, Luxembourg and Netherlands, Guernsey. And so in thinking about how to reorganize, we decided that we'd like to make the parent company here in Malta. When we spoke to the regulator, there was a particularly good reason for doing that. In that in Ireland, the Irish financial regulator, who was our lead regulator at the time because Custom House was originally an Irish company, they had reservations about allowing us to call our Singapore and Chicago offices Custom House because they're not regulated centers, and they were afraid that they would get egg on their face if anything went wrong. That didn't particularly make me happy. When we wanted to go ahead and do the merger, we had to get permission from the regulator in Ireland because we were changing ownership, and we decided we'd try and organize it from Malta. We came and saw the regulator here, explained our position, and after giving certain assurances, we had a SAS 17, we're going to maintain that worldwide. They agreed to become our lead regulator. So we did that, and when we got final permission from the Irish regulator to proceed, which was at the beginning of September 2008, we managed to get the deal through before Lehman collapsed.
But out of curiosity, that structure that you've just described presumably could have gone in many different places around the world. And I'd be interested to know why you picked upon Malta as the location for your joint company.
Well, we wanted somewhere that was basically within the EU. We wanted somewhere that had strong but pragmatic regulation. And we wanted somewhere where we could develop ultimately the fund administration business, which is what we do, at a reasonable cost. And Malta provided all of those. When I first went to Dublin 20 years ago, it was much like Malta is today. It was starting out in this area, new. It has achieved a huge amount, but in the process, to a certain extent, probably exacerbated by their property boom. But anyway, in the process, Dublin has become very, very expensive. Luxembourg was always expensive, and Malta, to my mind, is the third centre in Europe. It's inexpensive, it's got the facilities, it's got good accountants, and we found, because we brought in a particular client here that required some really superb legal work, and we got it. I couldn't say more about the legal fraternity in Malta, and the whole structure here made sense.
Has Malta enabled you to do anything that you could not have done elsewhere?
The company we've set up in Malta, Custom House Global Fund Services, is now the parent company of the group. We took our holding company, which was BVI, and moved it, emigrated if you like, or immigrated into Malta, changed its name, and at the same time applied to be recognized as an administrator and to be regulated, which we are as a custodian of funds. That company is also the holding company of the other Custom House companies, which includes now Custom House in Chicago, Custom House Fund Services Chicago, Dublin, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Guernsey, and Singapore. And because of its lower costs, we're able to do quite a lot of work here that we've been able to move in for better margins.
And how many people do you now have in your Malta office?
As of today, I think we have 30. So that's in about 15 months.
Given all that's going on in the industry today, with AFIM, with the development of what are called new SITs or alternative UCITS, and a whole host of other changes that are taking place in the industry, where do you see Malta fitting into what's happening in the business?
Well, Malta can do anything that any other European EU member state can do, like Dublin or London. And I think it will do that. I think the other thing that's encouraging is that, for instance, they've just signed a memorandum of understanding with the Chinese, which means Maltese funds will be acceptable in China, if I understand it correctly. All that sort of progressive attitude is very good.
At the moment, I guess what I was driving at is that people are seeing a sort of hedge fund-like product in alternative UCITS. Do you think Malta is an obvious home for that kind of fund?
You know, I personally am not entirely convinced it's going to work. I think that the UCITS product is not really suitable for the hedge fund market, but some people have done it quite well, and if you're long short, it would be good. To change the subject slightly, the other thing that I like about Malta is it gives us, from our point of view, the opportunity to go into areas that we haven't before. We have recently launched a QROPS, which is a qualified, recognized overseas pension scheme. And that is a particular pension animal designed by, or under the auspices of HMRC, Her Majesty's Revenue Commissioners, which enables UK expats to transfer their pension offshore to tax advantages and everything else. We're able to do that out of Malta. I don't think we'd have been able to do that or would have wanted to do it out of Dublin or Luxembourg. And although it's not a huge business yet, it's a sign of the way that Malta enabled you to be innovative.
And what would you say to a fund manager who is considering setting up in Malta?
You know, getting to and from Malta is not as easy as perhaps it is to get to Dublin, which I think Dublin-London is now the busiest European route. But it's still a hassle to get from Dublin to Luxembourg. But that's the only thing that I find a drag about coming to Malta. It's a nice place, the weather's good, and you've got good staff.
Dermot Butler, thank you very much. Thank you.